Hello friends, today we're going to think about the practice of detachment, which is taught and encouraged in many wisdom traditions. What is detachment and why is it important? If we have a goal, any goal, it follows that we have to be detached from what is irrelevant or contrary to that goal. According to the non-dual teachings, the highest fulfillment and goal of life is to discover in direct experience our ultimate self, the reality in all, which is immortal and beyond all limitations and suffering. Logically, therefore, the practical teaching is that on the path we need to let go of attachment to what is limited and passing. But, we may say, in order to fulfill the purpose of life, we have to live life. How are we to distinguish rightly between what is necessary and beneficial and what is superfluous, distracting and burdensome? And another question arises. According to the same non-dual teachings, reality underlies and supports all phenomena. Separations and differences arise only from imperfections and distortions in the way we experience everything. By detaching ourselves from anything, are we not contradicting the principle of non-duality and creating a division, a two-ness? Let us consider all this carefully together. Detachment is one practice on the path to liberation. It goes hand in hand with another essential practice, which is discrimination, discernment. We've talked about this on other occasions. There are levels of discrimination. The highest and most essential for us is to discriminate, to distinguish between what I really am, my true I, and all the objects and events that pass through my experience. The true I is our conscious awareness. So the need is to discriminate between consciousness itself and everything we are conscious of, which includes outer objects and all our thoughts, moods and experiences. Closely connected to discrimination between self and not self is distinguishing between reality and appearances, between how everything appears to us in the mind and the reality behind and beyond appearances. On another level, we also discriminate in practical matters, in our work and in our leisure time, between what is best for us and what is not, what is truly valuable and helpful and what is not so. Ideally, detachment follows naturally from discrimination. If we come to know that something is not valuable or beneficial to us, we naturally become detached from it. If our goal is the highest self-realization and we give that priority, we will loosen attachment to what is unrelated or opposed to our great ideal. Let us remind and reassure ourselves that discrimination and detachment, rightly understood, do not make us cold and uncaring. On the contrary, if we distinguish the inner essence from the outer appearances of those around us, we will discover that the true self in them is not different from our own inner being. This is the key to genuine goodwill and empathy. Detachment from appearances implies attachment to, or rather non-separation from, the real in all. So detachment does not create or reinforce duality. It leads from the apparent divisions to discovery of the oneness of all. In principle, then, right detachment is natural and clearly in our best interests on all levels. In practice, we know that it is often difficult. Why? To answer this, we have to get to the root of the problem. And again, we find the connection between detachment and discrimination. The non-dual truth is that our true self never was and never could be anything other than pure, absolute consciousness, the ultimate reality in all. What seems to hide and separate us from our true being is the way we have become identified with an individual body and mind and life story. This experience of identification with a separate someone is what we call the ego. The finest form of discrimination is between ego identity and true self-knowledge. And the highest detachment is detachment from the limited ego. This cannot be entirely simple and effortless because ego identity enters into our experience at every level. The ego is bound up with our will to live, to survive, to grow, to prosper, to fulfill our potentials. It is the ego that gives life and urgency to all these elements of our human nature, and as such, the ego performs an essential function. Complexity and difficulties arise where these elements of our nature appear to be in competition or even in conflict with one another. And as we have understood, it is ego identification that obscures the supreme bliss and freedom of true self-realization. So, how shall we proceed? The first step in dealing with any challenge is to look at it carefully, to see it as clearly as possible. First then, let us ask, what am I attached to and why? To find out, watch what is happening in your mind, the thoughts, feelings, reactions, habits. Get to know your mind. Observe its movements. To become the observer of the mind is to immediately begin detaching ourselves from the sense of identity with the mind. So this is progress in itself. At the same time, if we are sincere, this investigation will reveal more of the challenges. It is not easy to be fully aware of the habits and dynamics of the mind and emotions when we're being carried along by them. For example, something might make us feel insulted. Then our response may be, "That person was really rude. That's bad." This would prevent us from noticing, "Oh, I am particularly sensitive to apparent insights. It would prevent us from asking, did they really mean to insult me? Or was that how I perceived it? Externalizing the causes of our reactions can disguise hidden vulnerabilities within ourselves. Carefully observing your mind and detaching from its ways is a skill that needs to be practiced. What then are the attachments gradually revealed by our self-observation? The details will differ for each of us, but the attachments we all have share some general features. We are attached to what makes us feel happy and secure, to what protects and supports us, what gives us pleasure, and what we believe makes us significant in the eyes of others. So we are attached to what fulfills our perceived needs. In effect, this means our homes, possessions, relationships, our social position, what enhances our status and value. Should we try to convince ourselves that all this is not important? Should we neglect it or push it away? No, that is not realistic or necessary. Right detachment is detachment from the belief that any of these things can bring us the supreme and lasting happiness we are seeking. This is the key: to clearly understand and be convinced that nothing in the world is perfect and everlasting, and nothing in the world can give us complete and lasting inner freedom and fulfillment. Our homes, possessions, and positions provide happiness and security, but they do so incompletely, as we know well. Our happiness is dimmed by an underlying fear that we may lose what we have, or lose the ability to enjoy it, or that we may be missing out on something better, or that seeking more risks losing what we have or being disappointed. Such anxieties are endless and unavoidable so long as we are attached to and dependent on externals. Is the answer to stop caring about our homes and the rest? No, friends. It is our worldly responsibility to give them adequate care and attention. But let us note the fear that undermines our happiness and realize that we could let go of some of what we have without losing what is essential. Perhaps some losses might even allow us to appreciate more what is essential. This revaluation does not prevent us from constructive endeavors. For example, we might seek promotion at work in the sincere belief that we could do a good job and benefit all concerned. The art is to do so without being afflicted by anxiety in the process or crushed by disappointment if the new situation does not come about. This principle applies to all our work and activities. It often happens that the quality of what we do and our pleasure in it are spoiled by concerns about the outcome. Rather than focusing on the task in hand, our mind is distracted by hopes and fears about what might happen. The solution is to fix our attention firmly on what we're doing, simply because it needs to be done, and to let go of attachment to what we hope or believe the result should be. Sometimes it is helpful to actively give up the feeling that we have a right to the rewards of our actions and to see them as an offering. An offering not to something above or far from us, but an offering from what is sometimes called our small self to our own true universal self. This is the meaning of sacrifice, to make sacred. It may not be easy to let go of old habits and attachments, but we can practice and rise in this great life skill. And every step in this direction spares us much fruitless anxiety. Let us remember that the law of cause and effect rules the phenomenal world. Every action enters into the totality of ongoing events and outcomes around us, which are far beyond our individual control. If we remain psychologically attached to the results of our efforts, we are affirming our identity as separate individuals in the world. In contrast, when we use our mind and body as instruments, focusing them on the needs of the moment, and let go of futile anxiety, we affirm our true identity as the consciousness that knows the mind and body, but is not limited by them. Now our inquiry into the dynamics of the mind and our attachments is going deeper. We are uncovering the root of all attachment, fear. The fear of losing what we believe we depend on for our well-being. And it is this fear that denies us inner peace and joy. And with this understanding comes the good news, the positive and liberating knowledge that we do not ultimately depend on outer things for our happiness and well-being. The supreme happiness does not arise from our connection to anything outwardly. Bliss is the nature of self. Self alone is pure bliss. The need is to be free of what appears to obscure and separate us from the one self in all. We may ask again, does detachment mean believing that I do not need anything in the world? No. Every human being has essential and legitimate needs for nourishment, security, warmth, rest. These are provided through our homes and material income. Then let us reflect further. What is the ultimate source and support of our homes and material resources and all that they are part of? They rest on the laws of nature, which are themselves expressions of the most inward and subtle principle of all, what is sometimes called the Tao or the universal non-dual Dharma. We may ask if there is evidence of such a principle upon which all phenomena ultimately depend, and in which, therefore, we can or should place our deepest trust. Let us remember that the answer to this question is by definition beyond the competence of our senses and mind. So here it is reasonable to listen to the testimony of enlightened sources. The traditional non-dual teaching is that only the supreme reality is absolutely real. Everything else is the expression of imperfect knowledge, as darkness is nothing but the absence of light. Ultimately, all change and actions and reactions belong to the level of phenomenal appearances. The true principle underlying all can only be apparently obscured by thoughts and actions which deny the one reality behind and beyond all the changing forms that present themselves to our finite mind and senses. To employ our mind and body in what needs to be done for its own sake, without attachment to a result, as an offering from the apparently finite to the transcendent reality, this is the way to the only secure security, to freedom from fear, unfading fulfillment. Let us be grateful for what we have and give it due attention. And let us be supremely grateful to the ultimate support and reality in all, the being of our being. Gratitude begins with recognition. Of course, as human beings, we will feel the effects of loss and gain, apparent successes and failures. We do not have to suppress or deny these inner movements. We lose our balance only when we completely identify with them, forgetting that they do not touch my true self. Detachment is connected to, but not the same as, evenness of mind. If evenness of mind or equanimity is imposed as a discipline, it may lead to suppression and unstable reactions. Trying to ignore or deny the difference between pleasure and hardship is not equanimity. True equanimity is the result that follows from detachment, which is based on right understanding. Detachment should not be confused with aversion. To be averse to something is still to be affected by it. A feeling of aversion, for example, to intimate human contact may spring from hidden frustration or disappointment. This attitude is unstable and liable to rebound. What is needed here is more conscious inquiry into the mind's dynamics. Then our understanding can deepen, and aversions will be gradually replaced by satiety, which arises spontaneously when we have discovered the limitations of what anything finite can provide. Satiety in turn can lead to a subtle distaste or condemnation of what no longer holds our interests. Here, a subtle sense of superiority appeals to the ego. This too is not true detachment. Detachment involves no denial or criticism of the qualities that make anything what it is. Let us always remember what we really want to be free of. If we know this clearly, we have the best motivation. The practice of detachment and the pursuit of happiness fuse together. Our highest good and goal is supreme self-realization, direct knowledge of the immortal Absolute. No mundane gain or achievement bears comparison to this. Loss and disappointment cause us sorrow because we feel we have lost something valuable. This sorrow is eclipsed by the discovery of the ultimate source of all value, which can never be taken away. We find that detachment means being attached to a much wider, liberating principle of lasting happiness. You will begin to discern an invisible hand, so to say, gently pulling you towards the light. We seek bliss, yet bliss is not something to be attained. It is the nature of our being. True detachment is detachment from exactly what we want to be free of, groundless fears. The ultimate fear, the root of all the others, is the fear of being nothing, of ceasing to exist, of having no significance at all. But this fear is entirely ungrounded because it is based on an impossibility. Self cannot cease to exist. Self is existence. Why is this not obvious? Because of the ego, which is precisely where the ultimate reality appears to have been projected onto the finite body and mind. So let us reflect carefully on the teachings and learn the art of offering the limited self to our own true self. This is detachment from all suffering.